That's my way of leaving my job.
So Antonio Brown, and for all y'all non-sports people, we about to talk about some football. Antonio Brown, he's had some troubles. That's been widely reported, but he got a third chance with Tampa Bay, with the Buccaneers, and he was doing well. Just came back from an injury. He'd been in some controversy, but he came back and it was the third quarter against the Jets, and he had enough, and he just hold on, let me cue up this B-roll real quick. He had enough. Come on, B-roll. He just started taking his stuff off and said, "I'm tired of y'all. I'm done."
Yeah.
But why did he have enough? What led to it? Because that's what I was like.
There's been like conflicting reports. One person said one story I read was he was mad because they benched him because they were trying to keep him from getting some performance bonuses. Another story was that he had been trying to tell the training staff and the coaches that he felt like he was too injured to play because, like I said, he was just coming back from injury, and they were trying to put him in. So I don't think the whole true story has come out yet, but
yeah,
man, that's pretty.
Yeah, I know it's caused a lot of controversy. I know that because I think it's led to a lot more stuff within their coaching staff and the management team down there, from what I heard as well too. So hey, man, shout out to him. He did what he needed to do.
If that was the case we have to understand, football is an American sport, right? We always talk about it on the show. And no matter what aspect that we talk about it, we can see that a lot of, not only the fans, but, the coaches and stuff, we know the coaches treat them like they own them, right? But then it's if the football players don't do what they need to do, they are going to be shunned. They're going to be talked about. They're going to be treated like you aren't doing your job. You aren't for the people. You aren't American enough. You aren't doing it gets crazy. And that's what kind of conversation that I seen in like Twitter and on all those spaces. But if this man walked out because he felt like he was injured and they kept trying to push him to continue to play and, just injure his body more potentially. I think, him walking out for his peace, him taking a stance, him, doing something that is not the norm in this space. Kudos to him. A lot of people are looking at it as like, he's lazy. This is, he doesn't have any work ethic. He doesn't have any, team camaraderie. He doesn't have none of that. This is the conversation that's having online with the people who love football, mostly the clear ones. But they're the ones that lead these conversations when it comes to any football players or whatever. What did we see with that boy who didn't choose the predominantly white school to go to, which was FSU?
He went to Jackson State.
Yeah, and he moved on to an HBCU. We saw that at this point, these folks feel like they own you.
From Florida State to Jackson State.
Yeah, so it's just seeing it is, seeing this to me. And if we look at his, what was it, his college football picture, or was it his high school football picture? He had goals all at the bottom, and this is how he took his picture.
Yeah, he wanted them.
You should know not to mess with somebody.
I want to hear
boys, right?
I want to hear from Brother Mac on this, but do me a favor and put back up the B-roll of the brother taking off his shirt, and I want you to zoom in.
Abs.
Because I don't think this football player got nothing on Dr. Mac.
Dr. Mac won.
That's just a serious conversation, and you taking it back to the abs. I cannot.
Right.
No,
don't worry. I was looking at it too. Dr. Mac won. Just leave it at that. Dr. Mac won.
Let me let Dr. Mac talk about it because I know he had a poignant point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brother Mac. I didn't mean to sandbag the conversation. What are your thoughts on this, brother?
No. Well, first of all, the brother from high school who was arguably the number one or number two pick that went to Jackson State University in my hometown of Jackson, Mississippi, historical black college. His name is Travis Hunter. And
that's him.
And to the Queen's point, the narrative became from a white perspective of how this happened. And so what we need to understand is that the NCAA has now instituted where players can get paid for their likeness and image. And so then the discussion became the only reason that Travis Hunter went to Jackson State University is because there was a deal between some entity that Deion Sanders worked with that would promise him so much money. So they tried to act as though he was bought and paid for. But the fact of the matter is, the rule says that for your likeness and image, you can get paid. So even if that were the case, although Coach Prime denied that was the issue, but what they could not understand is what we have been preaching for a long time. The reason why these PWIs, predominantly white institutions, have gained so much money is because they have pimped our children. Run that ball, bounce that ball. They have done that. And from that, they've made a tremendous amount of money. So the idea that Travis Hunter could be socially conscious to say, I want to take my talents, not to South Beach, but to the Black community. Troubles them. They can't understand that. See, they can't understand. Now, as it applies to Antonio Brown, I knew that the moment that I saw this, that the first thing that was going to happen is that those in our community were going to begin to ridicule him, let alone what white America would do. So I have a far different perspective about Antonio Brown. And as Dwayne said, he has a distorted past of making these types of issues. But what we must understand is that the game of football, period, is a very violent sport. So violent that now when this Black doctor came up and started talking about CTEs, what happens to the brain, and that CTEs is a degenerative brain disease that occurs from trauma of anybody who is constantly getting pounded. And in the game of football, you are getting pounded. So I want us to take a different type of look at Antonio Brown. Go back and look at his history of how long has this little Black child been playing this very violent sport. And at a time when he played it, those helmets didn't protect you nowhere near as much as they do now. Speaking about the NFL, when it comes to CTE, there was a Black doctor who exposed this trauma. I'm talking about a trauma that made a linebacker like Junior Seau, who most of us look at as normal, take a gun and kill himself. Now that you look at that, Boston University has said most of the brains that they have looked at, that they've examined from football players, 99% of NFL players have this degenerative brain disease because of this constant pounding. Now, as it applies to Antonio Brown specifically, along with all of his history, go back to 2016. There was a game in which, when he played for Pittsburgh, they were playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. There was a guy by the name of Burfitt that hit Antonio Brown in the head. And if you were to watch that video, you would it was a direct blow to the head. You would watch Antonio Brown's body just go limp. Who knows what type of brain damage that brother has had? Now, in our community, we want to talk about the idea of mental illness still being taboo. So when you take a look at this brother's actions over and over in a violent sport, it's not like he was a comedian like Martin Lawrence that maybe succumbed to the pressure, Dave Chappelle that may have succumbed to the pressure. This brother is in a profession where his brain is constantly being pounded. So who knows, if you now take a look at all of his actions that we want to say he cray or he's making wrong decisions. What if something is wrong with his brain? Something to the fact.
That's real.
That you just go to the final minutes of Junior Seau's life. What was going on in this man's brain that would cause him to take a gun and shoot himself? And he didn't shoot himself in the head. He shot himself in the chest because he wanted to have his brain preserved so that people can take a look at it. And you can go through a list of NFL players who have suffered this way. So instead of ridiculing this brother, I want us in the Black community to show some love, understanding, and support of Antonio Brown. Yep. So all the things that everybody's doing and making jokes of it, the shit ain't funny. Who knows?
Like it or not.
And now he's got a group of leeches around him that doesn't have the power. And people saying, well, he ought to ask for help. How the hell, if you mentally disturbed, you're going to be able to ask for help and self-diagnose yourself? So I'm asking us in this community to show a little bit of love and understanding and support for this brother. Because if that train wreck were to happen and this brother goes to fix his life, now everybody's going to say, well, we should have saw the warning signs. Yeah, you should have saw the warning signs, but instead you ignored them and wanted to make jokes of it. There's nothing funny about it. When I look at him, nobody in their right mind acts that way. And I'm saying this. It is not as though I was an NFL player, logical, rational, doesn't have those compounding injuries. that these are actions I did. I'm not in a boardroom and I get pissed and take off my suit and go crazy and leave the boardroom. No, that's not it. You're talking about a profession that is extremely violent. And who knows what is going on, what those 10, 15 years or more of those repeated hits that this man has undertaken, and all of these athletes have undertaken. What has it done to their brain? So I'm just simply asking for a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding and support for this brother. Not comedy, not fun. That's my view.
Brother Mac.
So, Dr. Mac, you go ahead, Dwayne. You beat me to that point about the hit from Burfict. If you look at Antonio Brown's past, even before that, I mean, he might not have been the model citizen, but it wasn't these issues that have happened since then.
Exactly.
And if you look at that hit, Vontaze Burfict was known to be one of the dirtiest hitters ever. If you look at that hit, people thought he would never play football again after he got hit. And he came back, and then kind of that's when all the issues started snowballing. So that's a really good point. But it goes to, like, it doesn't matter what's going on in these players' personal lives as long as they can step out on the field and make these owners this money. It doesn't matter.
I mean, the parallels, the analog to slavery.
They're going to keep bringing them back, and then they're going to put them out on Front Street, and they're going to be the scapegoats for, oh, look at these crazy Negroes. Look at how they act.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait for the rest of the story to come out, because I know it just seems like there's so much more to this story, and just ready to see all the developments from it, because it's a lot. It definitely is a lot.
There's talks about the injury. There's talks about the money and all of those issues. I'm saying to you, any and every one of those stories, you can go down that path and have a narrative about that. I'm asking us to look a lot deeper into his profession and what is taking place in such a violent sport that can create this type of action and behavior that is, all of us know that is not rational. So what is it that could cause that? Well, if I'm certainly not a psychiatrist, so I can't speak to mental illness from that degree. But you got to believe that if you're taking that kind of pounding on your brain, something is going to affect your behavior. I mean, anything. So this is the part of this issue, as Dwayne and I was talking about it. When you take a look at that particular hit, you begin to see his behavior more erratic, even more so. Now, granted, he's had a history of this, but again, go back and just imagine the age at which he started playing and these hits to the head. Because remember, when you look at and to really understand it, you have to understand that when this black doctor talked about CTE and began to understand what was going on into these players' brains, when he tried to take that study to the NFL, they used their incredible power and might to shut this doctor down, to discredit him. And when it came to a point that you could no longer do it, when players like Junior Seau and others began to take their lives and other people started studying CTE, they realized that what this black doctor was talking about had much, much validity, which is now, even when Antonio Brown went to, I believe, the Raiders, he wanted to take his old helmet. But that old helmet was no longer sanctioned by the NFL. They wanted to have these more protective helmets, which is now why you start reading about concussion protocol and these types of things, because now they have understood the impact of CTE. So all I'm saying to all of us is that we have no idea of how that brother's brain is functioning now that leads to this type of behavior. So I'm just simply asking that we try to take a deeper look into it, because when you go into the story, I think when you take a look at CTE and the kinds of hits that these players are taking over and over and over again, I think that something is not right. And I pray God,
I took a hit like that.
The NFL never lets him play again, and that he seeks to help. Not he seeks to help, but somebody intervenes. And even in this program, when we talk about what we're talking about, and I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to give this perspective, I just hope that this comes across as a sign of our love and support for this brother as he hopefully can get the type of help that he needs.
One thing we're good at doing, Brother Mac, is laughing at somebody when they do something. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about how everything is funny. Rebecca, like everything is high, and then social media jumps in, and everybody now he's a meme. And they did that in a weird way, in a similar way. They did that with Chadwick Boseman when he came out at the very end of his life, and then everybody started laughing at kiki, and didn't even realize what that brother was going through.
That's right. And see, Ben, let me say this. We just watched the Summer Olympics, and we watched the greatest gymnast ever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when we saw her performance fall off, and when she talked about it, she talked about the twisties. So obviously, as she's doing these twists and flips, somewhere her vertigo gets off. If that can happen in your brain just because you twisted, imagine what can happen to your brain when you taking constant poundings. And that is what I think is part of it.
Have y'all ever had vertigo? Have any of y'all ever had vertigo? Because let me tell you something. It honestly, like, you could be standing still, you could be laying in the bed, you could be you could be grabbing onto the earth, and you feel like you're spinning around, like just being tossed around up and down on side. Like, it's one of the. I didn't know that's what Simone Biles was dealing with, was actually vertigo. Because
if you haven't had vertigo, just imagine that night when you went out and you had too much to drink and you laid down in bed.
Yeah.
Right, Dr. Mac.
Yeah, when it's spinning, yeah. Rebecca, you should know.
Yeah, I should know it very well. I do. And when you're past a certain age, feeling like that, you can't recover for like 48 hours. I don't like it.
You said 48 days, you're right.
So it might be 48 days for some, I don't know, but it ain't like it used to be.
That Haitian rum, that's what you were drinking for 48 days.
But no, honestly, the whole conversation is very important, because when you look at it from that perspective, because that's a point that I also wanted to touch on, is CTE. When you look at the sport, they are already getting beat down, hit, and it's. I've seen a documentary, not the movie Concussion, but I've seen a documentary of a few football players who have actually committed suicide. Yes. And in their letters that they left behind, they talked about CTE, or they talked about not being able to get help. And in each of them discussing their experiences, a lot of them were saying the same things. Like, I've been hearing voices. I can't sleep. This is, I'm jittery. I get angry at the drop of a dime. I can't really hear these kind of, like, I have issues and I need assistance. Yes. And a lot of them have been those people were contacting the NFL for assistance and were getting pushed away, and they felt like the last thing they can do is just hurt themselves, or and they could not live anymore. So that's when we do see Antonio Brown, we see him acting out in this way. Like you guys said, it's like the first thing that we do go to is memes, and we laugh about it and things like that. But when we point out these kind of things that the NFL doesn't even want us to talk about, things like CTE, and how and what we're looking at when we see them getting thrown all over the place, or getting these hard hits and coming back and they're not the same. These are things that we should be concerned about and looking at, and not looking at him as property, because that's how fans see him. They see him as somebody that he belongs to us. This is our guy. This is who he plays for. He plays for us. And when he walks out, he's letting America down. He's letting his fans down. But if he walked out of there knowing that he has an injury and possibly being forced to be put back on the field while he's hurt, after he's discussed with them, listen, I can't do this, because a lot of those men who ended up committing suicide, crying out for help, were saying, hey, I can't do this. There's something wrong here. And so if he walked out to go save himself, more kudos power to him, and all the people who have been doing that, because it's also a part of his mental health, his physical health. All of that ties into one, and he wants to live. And if that's the case, and he did that for himself, more power to that man.
Right. More power to that man. Let me tell y'all a quick story. I tried to play football, junior varsity, 9th grade, Brookhaven, Mississippi. And there was a young Emmitt Smith on our team. They didn't discriminate. You practice. JV was the practice squad for varsity back in Mississippi. So we were the ones getting tossed around. And the Coach Lowry, I'll never forget that little short Irish he put me in the hole up against a varsity player who, I don't know what happened to him, but he should have been the next Emmitt Smith. That man hit me so hard. I promise you, I looked and saw the sky. I looked and saw the ground. I saw the sky. I saw the ground. And then I hit the ground. And I took off my helmet. I took off my uniform. And I walked my ass all the way back home with a neck injury, though. You know, my head.
How old were you, Ben?
I was 14, and I had to walk 3 miles with my head leaning to the side because I got hit so goddamn hard.
Did you ever play again?
Ooh, I know that was a big ass head too. I don't know that neck hurt.
I went to the marching band. I was a drum major in the marching 14. Band.
Oh.
But the thing,
damn, I know that head hurt.
But the point is, so imagine the concept, the reality, not the concept, but imagine the reality of Pee Wee football, right? And that our children, a child's brain is still developing. And in the process of it developing, it's beginning to take those pounds and pounds, those impacts to your brain. And that's been going on from Pee Wee all the way up through Antonio Brown's here and right now life.
And the harder the better. The harder the better. The harder the hit, the more we celebrate.
Yeah.
And I don't know if y'all have seen, it's been quite a bit of high school students, middle school too, these kids dropping dead on the field.
Yes.
No explanation or anything.
And Queen, so when you were talking about the situation that these brothers have left letters and nobody's listening to them, the pain and anguish inside of me, it just hurts because I just know that something ain't right with Brother Brown because of the profession and what his brain has been undergoing for all these years. And it just pains me that in our community, we don't even have the decency to look beyond this joke and what we know what white America is going to do. Man. We know the narrative they're going to paint.
Okay.
So again, I just want to thank all of you for allowing us to have this discussion about the brutality of this sport and maybe allowing that to be some level of understanding of what is going on in our brother's mind and in his world. And he desperately needs our love, support, and those around him to force him. I don't care if you have to force him to get help, because a person who does have a mental issue,
sometimes they can't do it.
Well, he should go seek help. How am I supposed to go seek help when I can't understand right from wrong? Vertigo, my whole world's twisting, and you asking me to self-diagnose me and say go get help. Out of here.
And one more thing on that. So like, I've been seeing a lot of people saying, well, he's got the best. The NFL players have the best doctors. They got access to the best team doctors and this, that, and the third. Those doctors work for the team. They doing what's best for the team. They don't care about the players.
They paying for them.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, yeah, we're gonna shoot you up with these shots. We're gonna give you all these painkillers and get back out there. They doing
what kind of health insurance do football players have when they're done? When they're not superstars and they're not super rich? Let's just say the average football player, maybe they rode the bench. The average player who took hits, what kind of insurance do they have when they leave the league?
I'll say this.
Sure.
I used to watch Brian Gumbo quite a bit. And I remember way back in the day, and in particular, I remember this linebacker from Mississippi State, Johnny Cook, was a phenomenal linebacker. But you saw people like him and remember now, back when Cook and Emmitt Smith and a lot of these other players played, they basically played on a slab of concrete with a thin carpet over it, and they called it AstroTurf. And so try to imagine the pounding that their bodies took. And I remember, and this documentary, I mean, this piece on Brian Gumbo must have been 15, 20 years ago. And at the time, Johnny Cook, because I went to school with him, this man could barely walk. Go look at Earl Campbell right now. Earl Campbell can't even move because of the pounding that he took. And when they went in and tried to talk about insurance and disability, the NFL was rejecting every bit of that.
Yeah,
every bit of that.
Wow.
Yeah, I was about to say that was the same thing I heard, that once you're out of the league, man, it's all up to them. And like I remember seeing I think it was the same documentary, Dr. Mack, where they were talking about they were getting no assistance, no medical assistance or anything, forced to pay for all that out of pocket, and most times a lot of them couldn't even afford to get the help that they needed.
So I don't, and being so, to be fair, to be complete about that particular story. So I don't know what has happened today, which is why it was so important when the NFL Players Union, the other guy that I want to talk about with CTE was Drewerson. And Drewerson played with Chicago Bears. Now this guy, again, when you take a look at him, Model was a NFL player representative. He too took his life. And in the end, when they took a look at his brain, dramatically impacted by CTE. So
yes, man, listen.
There was one guy, I don't know if that was him or any of the people that you named was him. He got into his vehicle, drove the opposite way on the highway, continued until like he ran into a gas tanker or whatever, and it blew up. But he lost his mind. But he was also somebody who was saying something is wrong with me.
Yes.
I need help. I need help. And a lot of these guys go on. They're in relationships. They're abusive to their
Yes.
wives or their girlfriends. This is also something that we see as a trend. For former NFL players or NFL players.
Right.
And I have two friends that I know who played in the NFL, and both of them decided after they started a family to bow out of the NFL. And I look at them all the time, and I see them, and we'll talk every now and then. But they chose to go into they're black men too. They chose to go into different businesses, after a few years, because they felt like, hey, I am way too young. I'm in my 20s. I'm getting beat down. I got a whole family. I'm gonna just take some of this money, save it up. They quit the NFL, and they've started businesses outside of all of that since then. So it's like, you think about it. I see a lot of these men who are like 40 plus still out there throwing this ball around, getting their bodies beat down, I don't even, and I say, why is this sport such a thing? When I see black men getting beat down and running into each other like that, I'm not trying to knock it, because I know football is a lot of people's worlds. But when I see this as a thing, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. And the full audience is mostly white. I just don't like to see black men just running and hitting each other. And as soon as they hit each other, it's like they're all raving, or they're all really mad because somebody lost a point. Their life is over. The way that people feel like they own these players is crazy to me. It's crazy to me. But also the way these players feel like they have to show up for money that isn't promised to them, like in the NBA. For those people, it sucks. It sucks, because if something were to happen,
NFL money ain't guaranteed.
No.
Yeah, no.
So
that's right.
And Rebecca, if the point you just made, those 40-year-old guys you see out there, those are the quarterbacks. Those are the ones not taking these hits. If you look at if the majority of people who make it to the NFL don't play more than 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's like horse racing. It's all right. We used you up. We done with you, now send you out to pasture. So and the ones making the most money are the ones taking the fewer hits. Those guys that are in the trenches and are getting beat up all the time, they're making running backs and offensive linemen, the one that are really taking those shots, they're making substantially less money than the quarterbacks, the face of the front, the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers, who are just out there. You can't even touch them anymore in the
or the real heavy hitters.
And Queen, to your point, when you say you can't understand how these fans are, you got to understand fans is short for the word fanatic. So, and throughout history, the idea of sports. So football is what it is. It's a beautiful sport, but it is a dangerous sport. But try to imagine fans or fanatics in the Roman Colosseum. With the thumb down, kill him.
Yeah,
man has always been this way about.
Are you not entertained?
Wow, are you not entertained?
Yeah.